Hello everyone, we are here now. We're talking about advanced psychobiology, and today we're going to talk about, I'll try to add a little thing, what is a cell, and that's the types of cell, right? But then we'll talk about between and within neuron transmission. So what is a cell? The smallest unit of life, and all those things we were taught about it, right? Full stop. And they have a lot of things to do with our personality, our behaviors. Yes, this course, advanced psychobiology, the biological basis of behavior. As a psychologist, we are interested in how this biology or physiology influence our behavior. What are the chemicals responsible in your jumping and all of those things? Let me take it slow. Let me not go into that for now. It's not here. So a cell is key to our functioning and everything. So the two types of cell we have, apart from the other things you may be hearing others, but we know that the two types of cell we have are the cells of the brain, please. The glial cells and the neural cells. The neural cells are majorly the cells of the brain. You hear, so you either call them glia or glial cell. That's adding L to that GLIA, right? Glial or glia. Glial cells or glia. And then the neural cells or the neurons, Neuron, right? So the neurons. So the glia, let me touch it, is not consequential for this course. It's not that important, but I'm giving it as a very comprehensive understanding to what we're talking about. So the glial cells, for example, the Schwann cells, the oligodendrocytes, the astrocytes, and etc. I almost said metrocyte. Okay, so these are they are lipid bilayers and fatty like Schwann cells that try to help in covering fats. When somebody gets injured, those fats you see in that place is what they call the Schwann cells. They help to reduce bleeding and everything. They help in the treatment of this course. Will touch something like myelin sheath, and we'll see also it's a part of a glial cell or Schwann cell that has a role to play in the neural transmissions. So the important one is the neurons or the neural cells, which are the cells of the brain, right? These are the neurons of the brain that help communication to be possible. I will stop it here. I will stop in that line, because the neurons, imagine now I just told you, for example, perhaps you don't know initially that we have two types of cells, the glia and the neuron, and you just learned it today. Research has shown that immediately a new learning takes place, that a new neuron grows in your brain. That is research. And if we talk about neurons and you understand their type of neurons and the ones responsible for encoding, both storage and retrieval, all of those things, the sensory neurons, the motor neurons, and the other types of neurons, which is not our interest in this course, right? So about our interest, and 100% exam question, please, for emphasis, I need to say it here, is you need to know what happens between two neurons, and what happens within a particular neuron. Now, between neuron transmission is what we are going to treat now. Now, it's very easy. How do the information that came from a particular neuron move from another neuron, down a particular neuron, to the next neuron? Yes, that is what between neuron transmission is talking about. So for emphasis, I'll repeat it. Between neuron transmission refers to the communication or transfer of information from a particular neuron to the other one, to another, or to the adjacent neuron. Yes. So that is it. Now, quickly, what are you going to say when you see this in your exam? You will have to start from understanding what happens, right? You will have to start with understanding the parts of neuron. If you can simply in your mind know the parts of neurons and their functions, then you have answered the question, what happens between neuron transmission. Now watch me, right? I can simply talk about the parts of neuron. It's almost like from my elbow to my fingers. Yes, but at my elbow there is a hole, right? I'm having a hole, for example, at my elbow, like the hole here, and before the hole I have a finger, or let's say finger. No, after the hole I have a finger placed. Then no, I should have it. Yeah, a finger should be here. Then okay. No, I'm having it this way. A finger down in a hole, then a wristwatch by my wrist, then my radius, that is my long hand, right, with the skin on it and the bone. Then by my elbow now I have a hole. Before the hole I have a bandage by the elbow. It's almost like cut off. Then there is a hole. Then I have a finger inside that, another finger that continue. So you see that from this finger to this place represents the totality of a single neuron, whereas this finger here at the back of that bandage and then inside the hole again represents adjacent neuron, another neuron that will carry that information that started from these initial fingers down here to the wristwatch, to the skin, to the bone, to the bandage, to the hole, and then this finger here, the second neuron, will carry it and continue for higher order processing. I'm trying to make it very simple and should I say visualistic, right? Okay, so with what I just said, the fingers, the wristwatch, the skin on my long hand, right? The bone that the skin covers, the bandage and the hole, then the next finger that continued after the hole. So starting from the first fingers, or the fingers in the first instance, they are the dendrites. The wristwatch is where you see the soma, that is the cell body. The axon hillock is also there. Then the bone of the long hand is the axon. The skin covering the bone is called the myelin sheath. Then in this bandage we have you can call it axon terminal, you can call it nerve ending, then, or you call it the synaptic. Okay, in this nerve ending is where you see the synaptic vesicle. I will explain them. Then the hole here is called the synaptic gap or the synaptic cleft. Then after this synaptic gap or synaptic cleft, you see the next finger, another finger, continuing the whole story all over again, and that is called the dendrite, another dendrite. That is the dendrite of the receiving neuron or the adjacent neuron, right? So that is the diagram. Now I want to put another additional information. So from this bandage, we call them the presynaptic neurons. Anything about presynaptic neurons are also known as, you can call them the releasing neurons, right? So here you see the synaptic vesicle, and that is where the terminal is there. Yes, in the axon terminal is where you see the synaptic vesicle, right? We're not going deep into that because when we talk about the releasing neurons, we have the metaboreceptors and autoreceptors, right? Not necessary. That is master's program, right? Now, additional information. So, but the one that receives, immediately you see them after the synaptic gap is called the postsynaptic neurons. The one before the gap is presynaptic neurons or the releasing neurons. But the ones after the gap that is the finger after it, is called the postsynaptic. And this postsynaptic is also called the receiving neuron. Yes, so now let's move immediately. After having understood this, what then are we going to say that happens between neurons? We will say that these dendrites, these fingers now, for example, like the dendrite, the way the fingers are scattered, has some tips. These tips on them are the receptors. They are the things that catch signals, receive information. So you start by telling us that the receptor cells found in the dendrite of the neuron, of the receiving neuron this time, because this finger here is also placed in a gap which receive that information. When the signal comes, the receptor cells in the dendrite of that neuron receives it, which is carried by this dendrite to the axon hillock. The axon hillock, remember that this, please, let me start again. So these receptor cells found in the dendrite of the neuron, receiving neuron, receive what we call chemical impulse. This chemical impulse is thereby moved by the dendrite to the axon hillock. The axon hillock converts, the function of the axon hillock is to convert it from electrical impulse to electrochemical action potential. This time, electrochemical impulse. The action potential, that signal, is now converted to electrochemical impulse. Right? Now, I remember this wristwatch. I mentioned two things. There is a soma beside it, or you call it soma or cell body. And so you tell us that the axon hillock converts it from electrical to electrochemical. That is done. We are done with the dendrite. We are done with the axon hillock. Now, the soma or the cell body. The soma or the cell body of the neuron houses the nucleus of the cell. However, this nucleus of the cell provides nutrition for the totality of the cell. Do you see how we talk about one of the functions of the soma? Major one. It houses the nucleus, which provides nutrient to the body, to the cell. Right? Now, having said that, we move. Right? So, after the axon hillock have converted this electrical impulse, electrochemical impulse, now the bone, right? The bone is the axon. We say that, sorry, please, it's not the bone. These are the nerves in your brain. Don't misunderstand my example, right? So the axon of the neuron functions as the transport media or medium, carrying the electrichemical impulse from the axon hillock to the axon terminal, the bandage area, right? Please, not the bandage, but the axon terminal, that's what we'll call it. But don't misunderstand that word I'm using. The axon terminal, that is the function of the axon. Now, the myelin sheath covering the axon. We also pointed out that the myelin sheath function as an insulator. The myelin sheath is a fatty bilayer. When we say fatty bilayer, it's a lipid bilayer, sorry. That means it's a fatty substance. That is when I said that it's part of the Schwann cells, right? So it's the glial cells. So the myelin sheath is a fatty bilayer, lipid bilayer that covers the axon. It serves as an insulator or insulation to the axon, preventing loss of electric charges, right? Or preventing discharges, electrical discharges, and also facilitates the transmission of that electrical impulse, electrochemical impulse from the hillock to the axon terminal. So that is the function of the myelin sheath. Then we move to the axon terminal, and I mentioned importantly here, that is where at this axon terminal we see the synaptic vesicle. The synaptic vesicle is also known as this. It's a sac-like membrane that contains all the neurotransmitters. The synaptic vesicles found in the axon terminal is like a sac containing liquids. These liquids, the neurochemical liquids in the brain that contain all the neurotransmitters, right? Now, once the charge comes to the axon terminal and hits that that signal hits the synaptic vesicle, the synaptic vesicle opens and pours in neurotransmitter inside the gap, inside this hole here, or the synaptic cleft, which is thereby carried on, received by the receiving or the adjacent neuron of the that is receiving the dendrite of the adjacent neuron for higher order processing. Do you see that this neuron has communicated from this neuron to this one now? From here to this, from dendrite to hillock to axon and myelin facilitating, then the chemical and the liquid is poured here and then taken by the next neuron. So this is between neuron transmission. So if you are asked this in exam, you understand that you're going to tell us that the information received by the dendrite of an adjacent neuron is converted from that chemical impulse by the axon hillock to electrochemical impulse, which the soma supply nutrient for the cell, and then the axon carries to the terminal, and then the myelin sheath covers and facilitates and insulates and facilitates transmission. And when the information comes to this vesicle, the liquid, the neurotransmitter is released in the gap, and then the information is thereby received by the dendrite of another receiving neuron or adjacent neuron for higher order processing. So this is it, and please do like, share and subscribe to our channel. God bless you, and see you in the next video.